Hey, what's up? Hello, my name is Alexis and welcome to today's video where I'm going to be going over the books that I read so far this year, so a mid-year reading wrap-up. So by the end of June, I was able to read 25 books in total and a majority of them were audiobooks. Who knew audiobooks would turn my life around? It's mind-boggling to me how I never liked audiobooks before. I have been going hard on these audiobooks. So this year consisted of mostly audiobooks as well as a lot of rereads from books that I read in high school. So a lot of these books are going to be a bit older and not like in the new. I really have been wanting to reread some of the books that I read and I could never get through it because I take forever reading until I found audiobooks. So but let's go ahead and get started with the first book that I read this year, which is Book Lovers by Emily Henry, which I gave a 4 out of 5 stars. I'm gonna be holding my phone a little bit because I don't want to get off track because I have to go through 25 books, so I want to give a short summary for every book. So Book Lovers follows our main character Nora. She is a book publisher and she leaves the big city of New York with her sister to do like a bit of a getaway before her sister has her, I don't know how manyth child, third or fourth or something like that. So they go to a town called Sunshine Falls, which is based off of a book that she helped publish. It was like a really popular book. And whenever she gets there, she ends up running into her editorial rival and they have to work together to help his parents' bookstore. It won't eventually close. The next book I read was another Emily Henry book, and that was The People We Meet on Vacation, which I gave a 5 out of 5 stars. So this book mostly follows the view of Poppy, but Poppy and Alex are former best friends that would go on summer trips together every year until something happens where they stop talking to each other completely, and Poppy plans one more vacation to reunite their friendship, and everything about their trip is just going wrong. So this book consists of a lot of like flashbacks to their previous vacations, which I found so interesting. Like I really loved it, and I really loved their dynamic as well as like the falling out, like things always happen. So it really stuck. This specific Emily Henry book really stuck to me. The next book is, you guessed it, another Emily Henry book. I read Happy Place by Emily Henry and I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. So this book follows Harriet, and more specifically her little friends group trip to Maine that they do every single year. But the thing is, Harriet's boyfriend or ex-boyfriend and her have broken up and the group doesn't know, and everyone just assumes that they're just perfect with each other. So Harriet and Wynn decide that Wynn should stay out of this vacation this time, but her friends actually convince him to come anyways because there's a big plan, a big surprise or something. So Harriet and Wynn decide to pretend to still be together, which just pissed me off to begin with. Like, I started this book off on the wrong foot. I am not going to be pretending to be together with someone just to protect the feelings of my friends. Like, if they were your really real friends, I don't think they would mind that you're not in a relationship anymore. So Happy Place is my lowest rating Emily Henry book. I did also read Beach Read, but I read it last year, but just now I did read it. The next book I read was My Year of Rest and Relaxation by Otessa Moshfegh. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong, but I gave this book a 4 out of 5 stars. I'm super used to reading like fantasy and romance books, and I've seen a couple people talk about this book and I was just like, you know, I'm kind of in this mood, so I'm gonna give this a try. It's very different from my fantasy romance. So this book follows the narrator. She is a young, pretty, and recent graduate from Columbia University living in a paid-for Manhattan apartment in the year 2000. But she feels a hole in her heart due to her parents' passing and her relationships with her friend and romantic interest. So she decided to take a year off of life. Boy, do I wish I could do that. So she plans to take a year off of life with the help of medications because she plans to sleep through most of it. and we go through the ins and outs of her mental state throughout the whole year. I connected to this character on on a deeper level. Like, she was very straightforward. She was really like, I don't care. Like, she's almost borderline mean, which doesn't sound great for me with like her friend in this book. But like, it's honestly, it's just, it felt so real. Like, I felt seen. This sounds so bad. It sounds like I'm a nutcase. I felt seen within this book. And the ending, like, I kind of saw the ending coming just based off the time period, but it had me shook. I literally was crying in my car when I was listening to the ending. So the next 3 books I read were part of the Airhead trilogy by Meg Cabot. The first one being Airhead, which I gave a 3 out of 5 stars. This is the beginning of my high school rereads, and this is actually the first series I ever read. Like, ever. It's basically what got me into reading, so I was just like, you know, I'm gonna try it again on audiobook. Emerson, or M. Watts, is a high schooler, and she's not one of the popular girls. She actually loathes them and their interest in celebrities. But her younger sister Frida wants to be just like those popular girls and has a mega obsession with like the current teeny bopper celebrities. She leads them to a Stark megastore grand opening, waiting in line to meet the newest heartthrob British singer Gabrielle Luna when chaos erupts within the store. This causes M to wake up in a hospital in the biggest supermodel in the world's body, Nikki Howard. This book can't be taken like too seriously. Like, they basically took her brain out of M. Watt's head and stuck it into Nikki Howard. And I know if you think that's spoilers, it's been out for like 50 billion years. But it's like the whole main premise of the book. And it's just, it was so interesting to me when I was young, and it was still interesting to me now. But the writing was like very, very young adult, and you know, I'm almost 30. I couldn't get into the writing much anymore. But it is by Meg Cabot, who wrote The Princess Diaries, which blew up. So I don't know. The second book in the series is called Being Nikki, and I gave that a 4 out of 5 stars. This is just M being Nikki, basically the biggest supermodel in the world. She's doing like she's trying to do all like her gigs, her photo shoots, her runway shows and everything like that. And it's just very interesting to try like see like a normal everyday person turn into a supermodel. And the third book in this trilogy is called Runaway, which I gave a 2 out of 5 stars. M becomes just very annoying, especially about her love interest. Like, I couldn't stand it anymore. I'm surprised I even finished the book. So the next book I read is the first book in the Abandoned trilogy by Meg Cabot, called Abandoned, and I rated it a 3 out of 5 stars. This story is a Persephone retelling. Pierce and her mother moved to Isla Wessels, which is basically the Florida Keys, to escape Pierce's less than favorable past few years in which she died. So Pierce, our main character, died, and then she came back to life. Because of this, Pierce ends up getting a little more than she bargained for by having the ruler of the underworld nearby. So basically, Pierce died. Pierce went to the underworld to meet, what is this, Hades? Hades. To meet Hades, whose name is John in this book. Just John. So she meets with him and she's like, oh, I don't deserve to be here. And then John is like, I can take you back to my crib. And Pierce is like, oh yeah, sure. And then she escapes. So then all hell breaks loose and we have to deal with that. When I was younger, this book was like my Roman Empire, even though it was about Greek mythology. So the next book I read was a break from the rereads, and it was Bride by Ali Hazelwood, which I gave a 5 out of 5 stars. It was my most anticipated release of the year, and it did not disappoint me at all. So our main character, Misery Lark, the only daughter of one of the most powerful vampire councilmen, is tasked with marrying the alpha of the werewolves, which she only willingly does because her best friend is missing and she has a feeling that the wolves are behind it. This book was very spicy. I'll tell you what. It probably wasn't as spicy as like a lot of other books like this is, but this is the most spiciest book that I've read. Whenever I first read the synopsis of it in the beginning of the year, which I think this came out around February, I saw vampires and werewolves and immediately thought Twilight, and I was like, yes, please. Alright, so after reading that book, I went back into the Abandoned trilogy, which the second book is called Underworld, and I gave it a 2 out of 5 stars. It's just very, very annoying teenage angst, especially from the Underworld King, Hades, aka John. Like, why do you have teenage angst, sir? And the characters just did not communicate at all, and I hated every single bit of it. I barely finished it, and I did not finish the third book. I started it, I listened to it for about 1 minute, and I ended it. Mostly also because, like, I was willing to endure the annoyance, but the narrator, the person that read the book, changed from the first two to the third one, and she was so monotone. I could not do it. So the next trilogy that I read back from high school, a reread, is called Skinned by Robin Wasserman. I read it as Frozen by Robin Wasserman, but I guess on Goodreads it still goes by Skinned. Anyways, I rated this a 4 out of 5 stars. So in this young adult dystopian sci-fi, Leah Khan, one of the daughters of a successful businessman, dies. Another teenage girl dying. But her brain gets downloaded and then uploaded into a brand new body. The last three trilogies I read were like basically the same thing. We died. Or our brains got transplanted. Oh my god, I just realized that. Download is a new technology that allows regular people to basically turn into machines that look like people. And not everyone is a fan of the new technology. So when Leah, one of the most popular girls in high school, becomes a Skinner, she has to learn to become hated while her younger sister takes her place in basically her whole life. So her whole friend group, her popularity, even her old boyfriend. So the next book I read was the second book in this trilogy, which is called Crashed, or Shattered if you're going by the new titling of the book, the new cover of the book. But I gave this one a 4 out of 5 stars. We basically follow Leah getting adjusted to mech life and just dealing with all the hatred that like humans give them, and she's just trying to survive basically. The last book in this trilogy is called Wired or Torn, and I gave this a 3 out of 5 stars. Like the other two trilogies I reread, the main character Leah gets so annoying with her love life. Like, oh my god, get over it. But I did enjoy the ending. I felt that it was kind of rushed, like they just kind of word vomited it in the last 2 chapters of the book, but hey, I'm all for it. Get that sucker done. And would you look at that? The next book I read is the beginning of another trilogy from high school, which is The Kiss of Deception by Mary E. Pearson. This book is a little bit more relevant just because of the spin-off, the duology that came after this. I feel like that's kind of popular on Book Talk. But I gave this book a 4 out of 5 stars. So this book follows Princess Leah, the first daughter of Morningham. Anyways, Princess Leia is set to marry for an alliance with a neighboring country, but the morning of her wedding, Leah and her lady-in-waiting slash best friend run away to a small fishing village at the border of her kingdom, where 2 young men take interest in her and finds herself falling in love. But she doesn't know that one of them is actually the prince she was supposed to marry, and the other is an assassin sent to kill her. I thought this book was very cute, just so simple young teenage romance and not annoying like the other couple ones. There was just something different that Mary E. Pearson did. The next book I read was the second in this trilogy, which is called The Heart of Betrayal, which I gave a 4 out of 5 stars. Leah basically becomes pretty badass in this book, to be honest. She playing court like a fiddle. And then I read the third book in the trilogy called The Beauty of Darkness, which I also gave a 4 out of 5 stars. Did I give all of them? Oh, I gave all 3 of them 4 out of 5 stars. I really loved being able to see everybody's perspective, like all the main characters' perspectives in this book, and then just growing into their positions as being rulers and people high up in the court. Like, basically the young people are taking over the old people, which I enjoy, which we should probably do now. So then after I read that trilogy, I went into the spin-off duology called Dance of Thieves by Mary E. Pearson, which I gave a 5 out of 5 stars. Like I said, this is a spin-off. It's also like a sequel to the Kiss of Deception trilogy, aka The Remnant Chronicles. I forgot to say that for the other ones. It basically takes place, I think, like a couple years after the ending of The Beauty of Darkness. So Kazi is a legendary street thief turned to be one of the queen's, Leah, prestigious assassins, and she is sent to investigate the Ballingers. When Kazi and the new head of the Ballingers, Jace, find themselves in a situation where they have to set their differences aside and work together, they spark up some stuff. I basically felt like this duology was just like a retelling of the trilogy in a much faster pace. So I actually wrote down that this book reminded me of The Kiss of Deception and the first half of The Heart of Betrayal in supersonic speed. So after reading that, I went straight into Vow of Thieves, which I didn't write it down, either a 3 or 4 out of 5 stars. This book immediately follows the events of Book 1. Kazi and Jace find themselves in another sticky situation, but have to work through it, but apart from each other this time. Then I wrote on here, this book reminds me of the second half of Book 2 in the Remnant trilogy, which was The Heart of Betrayal, and then the third book, The Beauty of Darkness, in supersonic speed. So like I genuinely felt like it was just a retelling of the original trilogy. The next book I read, which I actually did read, I read on not my Kindle, I read it on the Kindle app on my phone, which is Unspoken by Sarah Reese Brennan. I think that's how you say her last name. This is the last of my high school rereads, so I gave this a 3 out of 5 stars. So this book follows Cami Glass, and she is an ambitious newspaper reporter in the small town of Surrey in the Vale. When the new school year starts, the town's founding family, the Lineburns, have made a return after years of being away. Cami attempted to investigate the sudden return of the family and why many of the townspeople are afraid of this family, which this leads into her meeting both the Lineburn teenage sons, Jared and Ash, and basically some weird shit is going on in the woods. It's kind of gothic YA fantasy. Then I tried reading the second book in the series on my Kindle, but I couldn't do it anymore. My physical reading abilities were gone. Shot. Which this now leads me into my more popular reads. I finished House of Earth and Blood by Sarah J. Maas, book 1 in the Crescent City series, and I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars, which I'm sure everyone knows what this book is about, what this series is about. Quick little rundown. It's a new adult urban fantasy following Bryce, a half-human, half-fae, recent college graduate and frequent partier, and she finds herself having to work with Hunt Athalar, and Hunt Athalar is an angel assassin working for the ops. That's what I wrote. Working for the ops to solve some murders. I actually started reading this book at the beginning of last year, I think, or like the middle of 2023, and I was reading it on my Kindle, and I got 50% of the way through, but before that I tried listening to it on Audible, and I just couldn't get into it. So then I got the Kindle version, and then I ended up going back to the audiobook version, and I was able to finish it. The trilogy on Audible is so good. Like, I genuinely enjoyed it. It was my most enjoyable book that I listened to. So right after that, I went into House of Sky and Breath by Sarah J. Maas, which I gave a 4 out of 5. I kind of did feel lost during the beginning half of it. Then I read House of Flame and Shadow, which is the last book. I think it's the last book. Are there gonna be more books? It's the third book in the Crescent City series. I guess it is a series. And I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars. So when this book came out, I kind of got spoiled by like the announcement of this book from like what was happening at the end of book 2. So I was kind of going into it knowing some things, and it was kind of pretty lackluster. Like the thing that was like most hype about this, and if you know, you know, I thought it was pretty lame. And I also really enjoyed following everyone else's perspective, not just Bryce and Hunt's, because their little thing I feel like ended in the middle of book 2. Like, we got it, you're together, cool, over with. I want to learn more about the other characters. We're getting down to the last 3 books finally. So I read The Serpent and the Wings of Night by Carissa Broadbent. I don't know, I cannot for the life of me remember the book name. The Serpent and the Wings of Night. I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. So this book follows our main character Oriya, the adopted human girl of the night-born vampire king, and she is going to do a legendary tournament where the winner basically gets a free wish. This is also a very popular book talk book, so I'm pretty sure a lot of people know what it's about. I read it just because I felt like I needed something to get me out of the slump, my reading slump after Crescent City. I basically did the equivalent of skimming through a book in listening format. I've been skimming all the books I've read ever since Crescent City series, honestly. This book though just didn't grab my attention much, but I do like vampires. After that, I read These Violent Delights by Chloe Gong. I started this right whenever I moved and I didn't have any internet, so I needed like a simple book to listen to while I was playing games offline. So I was playing like a lot of Supermarket Simulator. So that's when I started listening to These Violent Delights by Chloe Gong, and I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. And whenever I was trying to pick a book, I felt like this book got a lot of hate on Goodreads. Like a lot of hate. Like, it's not a deep and complex story, but like, who cares? Like, just enjoy it. I don't know. Everyone was like judging it hard. I was like, just enjoy it for what it is. But this book follows Juliet in the 1920s of Shanghai. She returns back to Shanghai after being abroad in the United States for college, and she is there to do her duties as the heir of the Scarlet Gang. We also follow Roma, the heir to the White Flowers, which is the rival gang to the Scarlet Gang. So the two of them are just going along doing their heirly duties, and they do have a romantic backstory, which makes this upcoming situation more interesting. So basically there's a sickness plaguing the city, and they end up working together to try to figure this out, because at the end of the day they want to protect the city that keeps their gangs alive. The last mid-year book that I read was Iron Flame by Rebecca Yarros, which I gave a 4 out of 5 stars. This is kind of the same situation as I did with House of Earth and Blood. Like, I started reading it, got literally 50% of the way through, couldn't continue reading, and then I just restarted the book in audio format, and I got through it super quick and I loved it. If you don't know what Iron Flame is, have you been living under a rock? It is the second book in the Empyrean series, so I won't go much into it. The first book is obviously Fourth Ring. Basically, dragons, lovers, and dangers. Oh my. So those are all the books that I managed to read by the middle of the year. I am already, I think, 3 to 5 deep, and it's the ending of July. So I can't wait to film the end of year reading wrap up. So those are the 25? Did I say 25? So those are the number of books that I read by the middle of the year. This is the most that I've ever read, ever. Like, I think I've read 25 one time in the whole year, like back in high school. But if you've made it to this part of the video, I just wanted to say thank you so much for sticking around. I really appreciate it. I'm really gonna try to get better at posting more videos. I feel a lot more confident in this new space. I moved out of my parents' house, moved next door to my parents' house, but you know, hey, it's still not the same house. But if you did enjoy the video, please leave a like. Let me know down in the comments how many books you read by the middle of the year, and also subscribe if you're new.